Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wolf Catholic Podcast. I am your host, Sean Stassie, the campus minister at the University of West Georgia Catholic Center. And today I'm joined by a special guest, probably the most special of guests in my unbiased opinion, my wife, Dr. Rachel Stassie. Dr. Rachel Stassie, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Excited to be a guest on your podcast.
Yeah. So clearly, she's not Father G. Father G is taking a much-needed break, which I'm sure he's not actually resting. But after a long Lenten season and a beautiful Easter weekend, it was a beautiful weekend. My mother got brought into the church by Father G, so it was just a really amazing experience there. So he's just taking a nice, well-deserved break, and he'll be back next week. But for this week, we decided to bring Rachel on, and we're going to talk about marriage, because what better topic to hear from than two married individuals in the Catholic Church. So we're just going to kind of open the floor first to the question of what is marriage, and what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of marriage?
I think it's, right there at the very beginning of the Bible, God created man and then very soon realized that man was not intended to be alone. Right. And so what does he do? First, right off the bat, try to find a suitable companion for man. And there's, I wouldn't say trial and error because, God is perfect, but this process of finding the right partner for man and the creation of Eve out of the rib of man. Again, I love they even stated in the pre-Cana, coming from the rib, not the head or the foot, equal to man.
Right.
And they create this perfect partnership.
Yeah. I think I didn't even think about, first thing in my mind, I didn't think about Genesis, but that is the foundation of marriage. And you're right, because it's like he gave them all these things and they were all good and beautiful, and man saw that, but there was something off, and it's because he didn't have his own. He felt isolated, and just how we feel like if we don't have humans that are around us and we don't have that interaction, we can kind of feel isolated and alone. And we see that a lot in today's youth, right? They're isolating themselves. They're not wanting to have any face-to-face contact because they think they can fulfill that need in other ways in the solitude of their rooms. And we see the damaging effects of that, and there's no replacement for face-to-face interaction. And it's not like you and I just randomly just texted each other and that was like it. We had to meet each other, we had to talk, we had to get to know each other, learn each other's past, our histories, our futures, learn about our aspirations, all these things, and just get to know each other face to face. And I don't know, I think that's kind of been lost in today's society. It's more whatever face-to-face contact you get is more superficial. And I don't know if I'm off on that, but studies do show that is kind of where things are trending. And even more so now, less young people are getting out in general. Even on dating, they're not even wanting to date. They just want to just do nothing really. And that's kind of sad, and that's why you see all this depression and loneliness. But anyway, I think we've already kind of talked about that before. Me and Father G talked about the dating issues earlier. But with marriage, it's a big thing to consider and discern between, especially young people. It's a big step to take, and so it's really important to figure out what it is that marriage is before you can even start discerning that with someone. So definitely starting the foundation is Genesis is a good place to start. And then speaking in modern day society and today's marriage, what we see, it's more civil, right? There's laws that are beneficial to married couples versus being non-married, just being engaged or just being a boyfriend and girlfriend. So there's that aspect of it as well, but we're going to be more referring to it in the sacramental in the church type marriage, and what implications that has. So I guess the next thing to bring up is how does someone, first off, dating is hard enough. So how does someone go from initiating that first step to wanting to date someone, to having a few dates with them and start thinking about, man, can I marry this man or woman? Like, what, like, how does someone know? Or is it just something that is like a gut feeling, or do you have to like pray about it and see how God is leading you? Or like, how does that discernment look to you, Rachel?
How real are we being on this podcast?
We're being real,
Are
man.
we being real?
Hey, super
Okay.
real, you know? Go for it.
So kind of like you were saying, I just want to, well, let's just say this. And until you've been there and until you've experienced true like matrimonial level love, you're really not going to know what it's like. It's this huge, black box. Am I there? Is this the person? And the world is telling you something different. They're telling you it's going to be hard, and marriage is all about sacrifice and finding someone who's good enough and not always willing to be around each other. Even saying, oh, no, it's healthy to want to not be around each other. And I feel like it's also worth saying that I was one of the people that fell into the trap. That I don't know if you touched on it in previous podcasts, but I was civilly married before, and through the grace of God, I've gone through a failure of form, and got annulment, and thankfully found that true love that we're promised by God. And how different it is. There's all this expectation, right? That you're in college, that's the time you're going to meet that person, or you've already got your high school sweetheart. And so it's all about the timing. And I think that couldn't be less accurate. It's all in God's time, which is frustrating for us. But in that person, you should see like almost a mirror of what you want your relationship with Christ to be. And this is almost coming back to your first question. I'm getting on my marriage soapbox, but marriage, it so much symbolizes like our relationship and ongoing, partnership, ongoing communion with God, that, we are the bride and Christ is the bridegroom, right? And so when you're with that person who is marriage material, it's easy. Like, that's the secret. It's easy. Yep. The support for each other is always there. Not if there's not gonna be any conflict, obviously, right? We're all here on earth. We're all human. But the compromising is easy. The decision making together is easy. The taking on challenges of life, your finances, your academics, your personal struggles, work. It's easy when you're doing it together. And you feel lifted up by that relationship. Yep. What am I missing? What do you have to add?
I think that's I think that's pretty good. For me, I didn't know what a relationship with Christ looked like before Rachel, so I think you were probably my first like experiences of objective love outside of maybe like my mom and sister, but that's just a family thing. But in terms of a pure stranger that I now have this like it's unfathomable love for, that can only be described as like supernatural and not normal. And so it's like, okay, there's something to this. There's something else going on here that's out of this physical realm that I'm experiencing with this woman. And at the same time, I was starting to hang out with Rachel. I got baptized with my grandpa, and even then, I wasn't really that into Christianity or anything. I was just kind of, my grandpa was dying, and I wanted him to baptize me, and but I knew I loved Rachel. I didn't know why. I knew why, but I didn't know exactly the depths of my love or why I was experiencing that. But clearly, like Rachel said, it's God's timing, and I wasn't working on my own time, because you should ask anyone I was around at that time. I wasn't planning on getting married. I didn't want kids. I thought love was just a social construct to make people feel better about themselves. I was just a whole mess. I didn't believe in God or anything, but through the timing of my grandpa getting sick and me going to church with him and the Holy Spirit working in my heart, and then Rachel coming into the picture and me experiencing that love and that easiness that she talks about, that it's, she had her issues, has her issues. I had my issues, have my issues. But when we were together, it's like all that was quelled, and like we experienced this serene chemistry of just easiness, and like we just didn't want to leave each other's side, and we still don't. And that continues, and it only strengthens through even the conflicts that we experience. We've been through so much together just in our like almost 3 years of marriage, and it's like every time something happens, it's not like we drift apart. We grow stronger together. And I think that's the same thing with Christ. Whenever you're wounded in your life and you bring that to the Lord, he only mends that together into a stronger soul. And whenever you decide that you want to marry someone, you got to literally imagine you combining souls with that one person, and you're not an individual anymore. It's you and the one you love, in one, going through this life together. And so you can't do it without the other one. And so whenever you're discerning the sacrament of marriage, you really got to, make sure that person is the one you want by your side for the rest of this life. And that's something you want to talk to them about. You don't want to just discern this in private. It's great to pray about it, but it's also something you need to talk. Like me and Rachel talked about this stuff openly all the time. Make it organic. It doesn't have to be awkward. Like we talk about the difficult things. Talk about, your future, your Rachel, she tested me in the driveway of her parents, asking if I was ready to do all this, and I probably wasn't, but I made it sound like I was. I think it was the Holy Spirit speaking for me. But I think that's kind of, I don't know, that's just my anecdotal evidence of it. But I think also through all of my studies and readings on the sacrament of matrimony, what it's supposed to look like, I think that's, kind of sums up what it's supposed to be like. So
I think it also marriage comes with this, to a degree, a surrender of self, right? And that doesn't mean you're losing yourself, but that you are kind of surrendering who you are as an individual to be something better as a married couple. Right. And just like, within our relationship with God, it's a full surrender, that you're putting your whole life, and heart, all your finances, everything, in the hands of somebody else who for a long part of your life was just a stranger. But with that right person, it's not scary, because you also know that you're receiving all of their surrender of self as well. And there's that trust, that you're not going to, I say the word abuse, but I mean, that's the best word I can think of. They're not going to take advantage of the fact that they have that control over you emotionally, physically, financially again, because finances come into a big part of marriage, and it's one of the conflicts that a lot of people face. But like you're saying, you piece back together being something stronger than before. I also acknowledge, like, it's easy to try and make somebody fit in that box, being like, again, it's time for me to get married, especially here in the South, where if you're not married by the time you're 25, you are an outcast of society. Or at least it used to be. I don't know how maybe all the kids are feeling these days.
Yeah.
But it really is worth the wait.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness. The joy that it just brings, looking forward to seeing that person at the end of the day, no fear in their reactions for if you dent the car or bring home a puppy when you say, oh no, I'm not going to do that. Your kid falls off the couch and hits their head, and not being afraid of their reaction when you call them and say, hey, I need you to come home from work because we need to go to the ER.
True story.
Parent life.
Yeah.
But also maybe think of what all the lows could be in your life and who you want by you for those. Like, I know you and I probably never imagined some of the lows that we've been through in these last 3 years of marriage. Mm-mm. Now looking back on it, problems we had with the house were a simple issue.
Yeah.
Taking on new careers,
Mm-hmm.
bearing a child.
Yep.
So glad I'm not doing that with anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's, and it's also something that, it's not for everyone. Like, everyone's not going to be called to the vocation of marriage.
It's true.
And so you don't, like Rachel said, you don't want to force, something to fit that box. Like, you don't want to be like, oh crap, I'm racing against time, I have to do it before. And so you just pick whoever, and then you end up in an unhappy marriage, and, who knows what that could lead to. So you have to bring it to the Lord. It can't just be something you do on your own. You have to pray about it, which, I'm not going to lie, I didn't pray much whenever I first met Rachel. But I think God was just working with some scraps with me when I was in that process. He was like, you'll figure it out, trust me. And then he was probably just telling Rachel, just let him, give him a shot again. And I guess I did all right. I got pretty lucky. But definitely you have to discern this type of stuff. This is a big deal we're talking about. Like, this is a huge sacrament that you're undertaking before God. And it's you're giving of yourself, like what Rachel said. And that's what the Christian life is. What did Jesus Christ do for us? He gave his whole self. God gave him his whole self to us in a selfless act of love. And that's what we're called to when we find that person that we want to, enter a covenant with. And, that's something you really have to discern, just like you have to discern with the priesthood, because you're entering into that sacrament. There's all sorts of different vocations that you can be called to. You just have to go to the Lord. Go to adoration. If you're on the West Georgia campus, come to adoration at the Catholic Center. Sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Even if you're not Catholic, you don't have to be Catholic. You can be whoever. Just come and sit in front of the Blessed Sacrament and discern. That's when a lot of people find their vocation. And so let's see. Let's end with this. So I'm gonna let you give some advice for what a girl should look for when they're what a girl should look for in a man, when it comes to, like, should I marry this guy? And then I'll give some advice, some probably bad advice for guys when they're discerning if a woman has the potential for marriage. So you go first.
Wow, you didn't give me time to prepare. Let's see. Spontaneous. And obviously we're not cookie cutter images. There's going to be, different personality traits for different people, right? Mm-hmm. I think kind of vaguely looking for somebody who always builds you up instead of puts you down. Mm-hmm. Someone who I think is, ready to be your defender. I say that in a way, not always physically, right? But kind of quick to jump on your side too, yeah. To be a united front on anything. Mm-hmm. Patience, think, ladies, look for a man with some patience.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness knows Sean practices patience with me every day. And you'll probably say it too, but somebody who wants to make you happy, truly. No, that's not for show. It's not for social media. It's not for you to praise them for it. And have to growl and go, oh, thank you so much for making my lunch today. No, someone who's just doing it because they love you.
Okay. Pretty good. I'm guessing you also have to be attracted to them?
Meh. I think attraction kind of comes with love, I think, a lot of the time. I mean, you can find someone attractive, but I think when you really love someone that you're like, oh my goodness, they're the most attractive human in the world to me. Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. That does come with it. All right. For me, I talk with the guys at the Catholic Center about this sometimes, and they don't have any girlfriends yet, so I guess I'm not giving the best advice. So I think a guy, when you're looking for a girl, you want to be able to be completely yourself around them and not have the weird masculine insecurities that most of us have when we're younger, especially. Like, oh, is she going to think that this is lame for me saying this? Or is she going to, talk to her friends about what I said or how I acted around her after this interaction? Like, it has to be organic. You have to be able to talk with her like she's your best friend that you would hang out with even if you weren't attracted to them. And so if you can't do that, then you're probably in it for the wrong reason to begin with. For instance, so with me and Rachel, me and her started hanging out by watching football together. I wanted to watch football with her even if she didn't like me, like as a future spouse. Like, I just thought it was cool that she liked football, and I wanted to hang out with her and talk about football with her. And if you can't see yourself just hanging out with a girl and like you can't fathom them not liking you, and you don't want to just be in their presence, be around them, just listen to them talk about their day, be there for them. If you can't see yourself doing that and you're just in it because you think that they're pretty, then that's a red flag in your head, and you got to kind of stop that temptation, because it's easy to fall into when you're younger. It really is. I fell into it a bunch, and it's very unfulfilling when you're in it for the wrong reasons. And so I think my advice for you guys is, first off, don't be scared to talk to a girl that you're attracted to, because they could be cool and you could just want to hang out with them either way, and it may not turn into anything. And a first date is not anything, where you're committing to a long-term relationship. A first date is just getting to know someone, right? You're just hanging out, learning what they like, talking about yourself. Mainly ask her about herself, ask her about her interests, try to figure out some common ground, and then kind of let that happen organically. If she likes soccer and you like soccer, or if you know a bunch about soccer, you may not have to like it. Talk about that like you're the most interested in that and see the beauty in that, and find a common ground there. And also try to find someone in the same faith as you, or at least is open to it. Like, I don't think Rachel would have been with me if I was just completely opposed to believing in God and just considered it dumb and like a fantasy that stupid people believe. And I don't think she would have given me the time of day, right?
I didn't before you were a Christian.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think faith plays a big role in it too. So talk about that though on the first date, because you might as well get it out of the way. Like, if she's like, oh no, that's dumb, I would never believe in something like that. All right then. All right. Well, it's nice to know you. I'd love to maybe be friends, but you're not going to go any further than that. So, but let's see. I think we covered mostly everything on marriage. You got anything else to add before we get to the random question of the day for you that you don't know is coming?
Oh no. I wish there was some perfect formula, where you could go down a list, and if you, check the right number of boxes, it's going to work out, and it's right. And ultimately, it does require a leap of faith.
I was just thinking that.
Even when you love the person and know you love them. I mean, I wasn't like scared, nervous on our wedding day, but there's still that thought of, oh my gosh, this is forever type thing. And it should, be a big, intimidating step, right? But, if we trust in God, we trust in his promises, trust in him leading us the right way, not with our hardness of hearts and hardness of our own heads, trying to fit a square peg through a circular hole and just make someone the right person. It works out. I mean, and you got to allow for some people to grow too. I mean, I think you're a great example of that, Sean, where well, both of us, it was a leap of faith even in the beginning, starting to date.
Yeah.
But how much we both grown. Finding someone who's going to grow with you, where you can set your roots down and grow in the same direction. But, I don't know. Today's gospel reading, it's just been on my mind all day of, after Jesus' death and resurrection, he's on the shore. The apostles are in their boat fishing, not catching anything. Oh, it sounds kind of familiar, right? And they see him on the shore and don't know it's him. He says, hey, cast your nets on the other side, which again, very familiar, deja vu for these apostles, right? And they catch more than they can bring in, which is the same way he called Peter and James and John. And they're struck in that moment and looking at each other and they're like, it's him. Like, oh my gosh, it's him. So many times in our lives, even when we don't realize that it's God leading us, having that faith that through prayer and through our faith, through trust, that if we feel called to grow, to go, to take that next step, sometimes we just have to trust.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to. Yeah, I was thinking about you have to be willing to take a leap of faith. Everything's not going to be in order in your mind when you kind of decide to give yourself to someone completely, because you're not in their mind. You don't know everything that's going on in their head, and I think it took a while for Rachel to truly realize that I genuinely loved her, like without any reservations. It was just, I was completely obsessed with her and still am. And like, she is my world and I would do anything for her and happily. Like, that's another thing. You should be able to do stuff for the one you love without expecting anything in return. You should do it and it should fulfill your cup instead of drain your cup. And so whenever I do things for Rachel, it's like, it's not like at my expense, like, oh, I'm tired of doing these stupid chores. It's like, I love doing things because I know it'll make her happy and I know it helps her life. It makes her life easier. So, all right, enough marriage talk. Let's get down to the real question, the random question of the day. So this is going to be a good one. So the people here on the podcast that have listened, they know that you are a football fan. Are you a football fan?
I feel like I'm being led into a trap.
No, you're not being led into a trap. It's not going to be a Tom Brady question. That would be bad. I don't want that. That's a whole nother podcast. We may have another football podcast for you guys that y'all can listen to. This is a good question. So, who are, and this doesn't have to be the best players, who are your top 3 favorite football players of all time? Can I guess before you go? Or no, I have in my mind. You guys gotta trust me that I guess right if she says the 3 I'm thinking.
All football players or Falcons?
All football players.
All football players.
I'll give mine after too.
So Tony Gonzalez was my first ever big favorite.
Good one.
Lots of reasons. One, of course, at least one of the greatest tight ends to have ever played.
Mm-hmm.
I think the tight end position is super cool with how versatile it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And admittedly, representation matters, and it was really cool seeing a Hispanic person playing at that level when, we're kind of underrepresented. Peyton Manning.
Ooh, good one.
Again, I just like how he approaches the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously not the most talented player. I don't know how many ducks he's thrown, but they still count as touchdowns, even if they're not pretty in the air. But just his mentality, his approach, the way he commanded his teams,
Mm-hmm.
The way he sees the sport as an art.
Yeah.
I just always kind of admired him as a player. I don't have favorites just because I like them as people, but it shouldn't count. I don't know.
One more. I know you have multiple more.
I do. It's hard to pick on that third one. And
I'm sure you want it to be someone that's actually like a really good player too, but I
I
know
do,
you're thinking
but
of Ricardo Allen.
I love Ricardo Allen. I love Matt Bryant. Okay, I'm choosing those two to lump them together because neither of them were picked for okay. Matt Bryant is great, and I will argue that forever.
He is great. Yeah.
Is he still the all-time score leader for the Falcons? Is he still?
Yep.
But just someone so consistent throughout all the years. Again, his mentality, his approach to the game. Ricardo Allen, again, somebody who's, well, in his case, not the most talented person out there.
Mm-mm.
I hate to say it, probably also lacking a lot of talent, but my goodness, the way that, he's always giving his all, always, focusing on being 1% better every day, giving all to his teammates, even when he tore his ACL,
Yeah.
that he spent the whole season coaching his teammates. His wife said he spent like 2 days pouting and then was right back at it. So, just people who love the game, love their teammates. They don't get bogged down by the negativity. I mean, how many people told Matt Bryant to retire 5 years before he did? He's like, oh, he's old. Well, in his words, the football that never asks how old I am.
It's true.
So, just love the people for their passion.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised you said Peyton Manning, but that's a good one. Yeah. Even though Tom Brady is better, but Peyton Manning is a good one. Peyton Manning's a better person, I will say that, for sure. My top three, so three would probably be, I just had it in my head. LaDainian Tomlinson, be three. He's a running back for the Chargers, legend.
You're an MVP.
Number two would be Jerry Rice. I always just loved Jerry Rice. I played receiver, and I don't know, Jerry Rice was just so fundamentally sound. He ran like a 4.7 40. And still is the best receiver of all time. One of the greatest players of all time. Number one is easy for me. It's Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes it's the most fun I've ever had watching football. Like, he plays the game with such passion, such joy, and he's just the best player ever in general too. And so I don't know how someone can not enjoy watching him play. And he's an even better person off the field. So
yeah, favorite active player, I would say.
Yeah.
I didn't even consider that, but yeah.
I had a feeling once I said that, you'd be like, oh, yeah. Me and Rachel, we gush over Patrick Mahomes all the time. And we're huge Falcons fans, but we just love Patrick Mahomes. We're very envious of that fan base.
Hey, get to enjoy, it's like about enjoying Michael Jordan in his prime,
Yeah.
Let's just soak it in.
Yeah, exactly. We don't ever have to play them, so they're in the AFC. We're in the horrible NFC. But hey, we're going to be good this year, So maybe I'll plug our Future Falcons podcast whenever that eventually drops. We're recording this in our kitchen at 10 o'clock at night. We just put our
with the kids asleep.
Yeah, we just put our kids to sleep, and so I'm drinking a Monster, and this is why it's only the audio version, because we're roughing it right now. So, but maybe you'll get a video version of us some other time. But we'll be back next week with Father G. This is obviously a little long. It's supposed to be only 20 minutes, but it's just how it goes when me and Rachel are talking. So you guys can just keep listening. Whoever's still here, you deserve a trophy. But we'll end it with that. Thank you guys so much for listening to episode 8. Yes, episode 8 of the Wolf Catholic Podcast. I can't believe it's been 8 weeks already. Wow. Thank you guys so much for listening. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, or evening, whichever one it is, where you are. Thank you guys so much. God bless.